it's in an action or horror film where it's expected to happen multiple times, or a comedy where it's a little more surprising, characters die in movies all the time. And if done right, it can lead to an incredibly powerful moment. Saying goodbye to these characters can, of course, be difficult at the best of times, particularly when a strong connection is made, even when it's the right time to do it. Was there a dry eye in the house when Tony Stark died? No. But it's hard to argue that it wasn't his time to go. On the other side of the coin are those movie characters that are killed off too early. There may be a shocking or poignant moment to come from it, but that doesn't necessarily mean it was the right decision. So with that in mind, I'm Ellie for Whatculture, and let's take a look at these movie characters who were killed off way too soon. Starting with Virginia, Happy Gilmore 2. As a legacy sequel coming 29 years after the original, Happy Gilmore 2 offered little more than what anyone could have expected. The story of Happy learning to play golf was largely similar to the original. The same jokes were made, and of course, Happy won in the end. One of the only genuinely surprising moments came when Happy's wife, Virginia, was killed off literally 3 minutes into the film. Happy sliced a shot, it sailed towards Virginia, and in the next scene, he was talking about her funeral. Virginia herself and her relationship with Happy were crucial aspects to the original movie, and the fact that Julie Bowen was returning at all was huge for the sequel. To kill her off so soon not only seems like an odd decision, but it feels completely unnecessary, as the film robbed itself of a great character and a great actor. Bowen and director Kyle Newacheck may have defended the decision, with the former saying that Happy shouldn't be happy, and the latter going so far as to say that without the death there wouldn't be a story. But this isn't true. Happy fighting to get his daughter into an expensive dance school would have absolutely worked, with Virginia still alive.
You know, when the nights get here faster and the temperature starts dropping and I'm in need of something cozy to pick me up, there's nothing I want to do more than spend some time with your friend and mine, Pumpkinhead, as in the 1988 supernatural horror movie Pumpkinhead directed by Stan Winston, obviously. And wouldn't you know it, you can go and do that on Prime Video right now, and if you sign up using our special link in the description or scan the QR code on screen, you'll get 75% off your first 2 months, which is as low as 99 cents per month. That includes both single subscriptions and bundles, so you can add in stuff like Apple TV and HBO Max and watch all the movies and shows you want to your heart's content. Like, guys, they have all of Columbo on there. I'm about to go into a winter hibernation and come out talking like Peter Falk. I can't wait.
Wash Serenity. It happens all too often, particularly in the current climate where immediate success is required for a TV show to continue past the first season. That series are cancelled way too soon. This was certainly the case with Firefly back in 2002. This season, the show garnered a loyal army of fans and was ultimately given a follow-up film in the shape of Serenity, something that brought back every major character and offered closure on the story as a whole. It was more than most fan bases get, though still left said fans wanting more. This was something that the studio was conscious of going into the film, as there was considerations taken for if the franchise were to continue in the future. Namely, Alan Tudyk, who could not be counted on to return for a potential sequel, and so his beloved character Wash was killed off. As Tudyk himself has since said, there was no characters in the world of Firefly and Serenity that could be killed and not be missed. In a perfect world, Wash would have survived the film, in spite of it being such a heartfelt and emotional moment. But also, in a perfect world, there would have been multiple seasons of Firefly so as not to need a Serenity movie in the first place. Russell Franklin, Deep Blue Sea. 3 years after Drew Barrymore was shockingly killed off in Scream, something that will be referenced again before the end of this list, by the way, Deep Blue Sea pulled something similar with Samuel L. Jackson. Easily the biggest name on the cast list, Jackson acted as the protagonist throughout the movie, right up until he was killed in a move that no one saw coming. Just moments after giving an inspirational speech on how to survive the killer sharks, Jackson's Franklin Russell was brutally eaten, giving the film its funniest, most exciting, and most memorable moment all at once. Deep Blue Sea director Renny Harlin reportedly took inspiration from Alien for this move. Back in 1979, Tom Skerritt was the biggest name in the film, and so naturally, Dallas was assumed to be the main character, which of course all changed with his death. The difference, however, with no disrespect intended towards the cast of Deep Blue Sea, is that the 1999 outing didn't have an Ellen Ripley to carry the story home. Yes, it was a moment that shocked, but was it worth losing the movie's clear MVP for it? Probably not. Duke, G.I. Joe Retaliation. It may seem like the dream job on the face of it, but even movie stars get frustrated with their work, and Channing Tatum is no different. The actor has been vocal in the past over just how much he hates G.I. Joe: The Rise of Cobra. Though Tatum was one of the better parts of the final product, he had previously passed on the role of Duke 7 times, and was forced to do the project only when threatened with legal action after signing a deal with Paramount following Coach Carter. Thanks to the film's commercial success, a sequel was soon forthcoming, and Tatum was so against reprising his role that he demanded Duke be killed off. This happened 20 minutes into G.I. Joe Retaliation, which satisfied Tatum and allowed Dwayne Johnson to step into the new leading role of Roadblock. It's understandable that Tatum didn't want to involve himself in something he didn't believe was any good, and that kind of honesty and integrity is actually quite refreshing. However, as Duke, he still managed to put in a star performance. He was easily the best part of the first film, and the sequel missed him greatly. Rory Adams' Life. In a movie where there is a killer alien on board a spaceship, leaving the crew with no escape, you have to assume that just about every character is in danger of dying. Ripley may have survived the Xenomorph in 1979, but few characters in such films are so lucky, as was the case with Life. The 2017 outing story was very similar to that of Alien, and the extraterrestrial in question this time wouldn't have held much threat if it didn't kill at least a character or 2. Ultimately, all 6 of the crew were killed, but who could have predicted that Ryan Reynolds' Rory Adams would go so early? One of the biggest names on the cast list, heavily featured during the marketing, and one of the more interesting characters, Rory seemed destined to survive at least a little longer. Instead, he was the first to die at the hands of Calvin. It's a shame because Adams was arguably one of the better developed characters in the film, and Life would have benefited from keeping him around longer. Luke, The Place Beyond the Pines. Ryan Gosling is one of those actors who can always spring a surprise or two with his range. From The Notebook to Barbie and everything in between, he has proven to be a master of roles, both dramatic and hilarious. One role of his, unlike any other, however, was as Luke in The Place Beyond the Pines. Here, Gosling played a deep and mysterious damaged man who turned from a motorbike stuntman into a bank robber to support his family. It's one of his more intriguing roles that was cut criminally short. During the 2012 outing, Luke gets greedy, hitting too many banks too quickly, and is ultimately pinned down by a police officer, Avery. At just under an hour into the film, Avery shoots Luke dead, allowing the perspective of the story briefly to shift to Avery himself, and then to both his and Luke's sons 15 years later. As a piece about legacy, the time jump does make sense. But such a plot device is always tricky, particularly when it leaves a character behind like this. Danson and Highsmith, The Other Guys. If you're looking to bring to life 2 cool characters, then you could do a lot worse than casting Dwayne Johnson and Samuel L. Jackson. The 2 played detectives Danson and Highsmith in 2010's The Other Guys, and were genuinely one of the best aspects of the entire thing. Designed to be the badasses to end all badasses, the film opened with them in pursuit of a group of villains, and the chase had it all. Action, quippy one-liners, and obviously Jackson and Johnson themselves. Of course, they were never supposed to be the focal point of The Other Guys. They were just there to help show just how far down the pecking order Alan Gamble and Terry Hoyts were in the NYPD. And their deaths created a gap that gave Will Ferrell and Mark Wahlberg's characters something to aim for. Jumping off the building to their deaths was hilarious, and yes, it made sense in the wider story, but who didn't want to see more of Danson and Highsmith? This was essentially a tease of a buddy cop comedy with Samuel L. Jackson and Dwayne Johnson, which feels like it would be a license to print money. Add in the fact that although they were barely in the film for 10 minutes, they were easily the most memorable part, and you have to think that maybe this was a missed opportunity. Joe Brody, Godzilla. After the success of Breaking Bad, Bryan Cranston had gone from playing the comedic dad role in Malcolm in the Middle to being one of the hottest properties in the industry. It's understandable then that 2014's Godzilla put him front and center of the marketing. Cranston played Joe Brody in the movie that would kick off the Monsterverse, a man who became obsessed with tracking the seismic anomalies ultimately caused by the king of the monsters that took his wife's life. Barely halfway into the film, however, Joe was unceremoniously killed and replaced as the protagonist by his son, Ford. This was a baffling decision on the part of the filmmakers. Not just because they wasted Cranston's star power and a strong character, but because he was replaced by Ford, who was far less equipped to lead the story. Joe had a chip on his shoulder and nothing left to lose, whereas Ford was almost just there out of bad luck and circumstances. He wasn't compelling or charming enough, as the audience wasn't really given a reason to connect with him, while Joe would have made the story far stronger had he remained at the center for the duration. Alice Hardy, Friday the 13th Part 2. There is no shortage of horror movie franchises that have gone downhill since an iconic debut. The likes of A Nightmare on Elm Street, Halloween, and the Texas Chainsaw Massacre all fit into this category. But has any gotten so bad so quickly as Friday the 13th? The first film in the series, back in 1980, is beloved even to this day and is an all-time slasher great. The subsequent sequels are not, as things took a turn for the worse almost immediately. After being the sole survivor of the events at Crystal Lake 2 months prior, Alice Hardy was brought back for the sequel. Though still battling with the trauma of Pamela Voorhees' attacks, Alice was starting to get her life back together when she was stalked and attacked by returning Jason. With an ice pick through the skull, Alice was killed before the title card even showed. The unfortunate real-world circumstances behind the decision to kill Alice off so quickly was reportedly due to safety concerns amid Adrian King being stalked after the success of the first movie. Of course, the actor's safety was paramount and of the highest priority, but it is a damn shame audiences were robbed of more from one of the best final girls ever. And finally, Randy Meeks, Scream 2. When thinking about characters killed off early in the Scream franchise, Drew Barrymore's Casey Becker almost automatically comes to mind first. This, however, was an early death specifically designed to shock audiences, to subvert expectations, and to show that nobody was safe, and it worked perfectly. The same can't be said of Randy Meeks' death in Scream 2. He was a major character in both the original and the sequel, and was killed by Nancy Loomis almost as an afterthought, in a fit of rage after he was critical of her son. The movie and the subsequent films in the series suffered from Randy's omission, not least because he offered something to proceedings that no one else did. In the very meta-heavy world of Scream, it was Randy who brought such exposition and explanation that gave the franchise its trademark, and when he died, this was lost. Sure, other characters offered certain aspects of this after his death, but the fact that in 2022's Scream, his niece, Mindy Meeks Martin, was brought in as a new rules expert shows just how much his presence was missed. Of course, you don't want to offer too much plot armor to too many characters, and Randy's death may have been inevitable in the long term, but the franchise could have gotten a lot more from him than it ultimately did.